Have you ever felt completely bewildered by a woman's emotional shifts? Like you're walking through an emotional minefield where the rules suddenly change without warning? Today, you're about to discover the hidden archetypal forces that Carl Jung uncovered, forces that silently drive women's deepest unconscious behaviors. What if I told you that beneath the surface of every relationship struggle with a woman lies an ancient pattern that few men ever recognize, let alone escape? This isn't about blame or judgment. It's about understanding the profound depth of the female psyche that Jung spent decades mapping. The pain you felt, that confusion when she suddenly withdraws, tests you inexplicably, or seems to transform overnight from loving partner to emotional stranger, has an explanation rooted not in modern psychology, but in ancient archetypes buried in the collective unconscious. Men who never grasp these shadow patterns are doomed to repeat the same painful cycles. They become emotional hostages, never understanding the invisible scripts playing out. But you're about to gain insight that will forever change how you navigate relationships with women. The solution isn't manipulation in return or emotional withdrawal. It's understanding the archetypal shadow that Jung identified in the female psyche, a shadow that manifests as unconscious manipulation when unintegrated. When you recognize these patterns, everything changes. The power dynamic shifts, the confusion lifts, and for perhaps the first time, you'll see clearly what's actually happening beneath the surface of your relationships. Before we dive deeper, you need to understand what Jung meant by this shadow. For Jung, the shadow isn't just negativity. It's all the aspects of yourself that you've rejected, repressed, or never developed consciousness around. It's the parts deemed unacceptable by family, society, or your own self-image. When it comes to women, Jung observed something fascinating. Society has historically rewarded women for certain traits: nurturing, accommodation, emotional sensitivity, while punishing others like aggression, dominance, and self-prioritization. This creates a unique female shadow where power often expresses itself indirectly through what appears to be manipulation. You've experienced this. A woman in your life suddenly becomes cold without explanation. She tests your commitment in ways that feel bewildering. She makes indirect requests and then resents you for not reading her mind. These aren't conscious strategies. They're unconscious shadow expressions seeking acknowledgement. Jung believed every man carries within him an unconscious feminine side, the anima. This internal feminine energy significantly influences which women you're attracted to and how you perceive them. Here's where it gets fascinating. When your anima is unintegrated, you project it onto women in your life, expecting them to embody your ideal feminine. You don't see the actual woman, you see your projection. And when she inevitably fails to match this unconscious ideal, confusion and pain result. You felt this disillusionment. The woman who initially seemed perfect suddenly reveals aspects that shock you. This isn't deception. It's your anima projection dissolving as reality emerges. This creates the perfect storm for manipulation dynamics to flourish, as neither of you is seeing the other clearly. Jung identified several powerful female archetypes that exist in the collective unconscious. Understanding these helps you recognize the archetypal energies that might be operating in any woman's psyche. First is the mother archetype, the nurturing, protective energy that sustains life, but can also smother and control when in shadow form. You've encountered this when a woman becomes overprotective, making decisions for your own good, while disempowering you. Second is the maiden virgin, representing purity, potential, and independence. In shadow form, this manifests as emotional unavailability or perpetual victimhood. You've experienced this when a woman seems eternally just out of emotional reach, drawing you into pursuing her while she remains elusive. Third is the enchantress, seductress, embodying desire, passion, and transformation. In shadow, she manipulates through sexual power or emotional intensity. You've met this energy when a woman uses intimacy as currency, giving and withholding based on your compliance with her unspoken expectations. Fourth is the wise woman, crone, representing wisdom, intuition, and truth-telling. In shadow, she becomes the critical judge, using intuitive knowing to control rather than illuminate. You've felt this when a woman claims to Just know, your intentions are impure without evidence, putting you perpetually on defensive footing. What Jung understood, and what few men ever realize, is that female manipulation rarely stems from malice. Instead, it emerges from unintegrated shadow material seeking expression and recognition. When a woman feels powerless in direct ways, the shadow finds indirect roots. Tests become a way to verify safety. Emotional withdrawal becomes protection against anticipated abandonment. Indirect communication becomes the norm when direct expression has historically been punished. You've experienced this shadow dance, the sudden emotional tests that appear without warning. The subtle shifting of goalposts in your relationship. The expectation that you should somehow know what she wants without her having to articulate it. These behaviors aren't conscious strategies but unconscious patterns. A woman operating from unintegrated shadow doesn't recognize her own manipulation. She experiences her behavior as justified responses to perceived threats or disconnection. Jung's genius was recognizing that relationships become battlegrounds for projection. Both men and women project their unintegrated shadow material onto each other. You project your unintegrated masculine shadow, perhaps aggression, dominance, or emotional detachment, onto women, seeing them as potential controllers or emotional destabilizers. Meanwhile, she projects her unintegrated feminine shadow, perhaps helplessness, indirect power, or emotional volatility, onto you. This creates the perfect environment for manipulation dynamics. Neither of you is seeing the other clearly. You're both reacting to projections, creating a relationship built on unconscious material rather than conscious connection. Now for the revelation that will permanently alter your understanding of female psychology. The most powerful female archetype operating in relationships is what Jung identified as the dark mother, the shadow aspect of the nurturing mother who both gives life and demands absolute fealty in return. This archetype isn't just present in some women. It exists in the collective unconscious and can be activated in any woman when her deepest attachment wounds are triggered. This is why you've encountered strikingly similar patterns of manipulation across different relationships, despite the women themselves being vastly different. The archetype transcends the individual. The dark mother doesn't just manipulate, she orchestrates entire emotional ecosystems. She creates intricate webs of emotional dependency, where your worth becomes measured by your responsiveness to her unspoken needs. She simultaneously fears abandonment and engulfment, creating a narrow emotional corridor you must navigate perfectly or face punishment. Think about your most painful relationship experiences. Remember the moment when a woman's demeanor transformed completely, when the warmth in her eyes was replaced with cold calculation, when her voice shifted from loving to detached in an instant. That wasn't mood instability. That was the dark mother archetype suddenly emerging from the depths of the unconscious, taking control of her conscious personality. The truly devastating aspect of this archetypal manipulation is how it bypasses your rational mind completely. It speaks directly to your own primal attachment patterns, to the part of you that once depended entirely on maternal care for survival. This creates a neurobiological hijacking, where your nervous system responds with fight, flight, freeze, or fawn before your conscious mind can even process what's happening. You find yourself making concessions you swore you never would. You discover yourself twisting into emotional shapes you barely recognize. You catch yourself desperately trying to solve the unsolvable puzzle of her approval, all while a voice in the back of your mind whispers that something profoundly wrong is happening. The manipulation reaches its zenith in the creation of double binds, situations where both compliance and non-compliance result in punishment. Express your needs, and you're selfish. Don't express them, and you're emotionally unavailable. Give her space when she pulls away, and you don't fight for the relationship. Pursue her when she pulls away, and you're suffocating her. Take responsibility for your actions, and it becomes proof of your fundamental flaws. Defend yourself, and you're unwilling to take accountability. These aren't rational strategies. They're the dark mother archetype's desperate attempt to secure attachment while protecting against the primal terror of vulnerability. The tragedy lies in how this archetype destroys the very connection it seeks to preserve. What few men ever realize is that women themselves are equally imprisoned by this unconscious pattern. The dark mother archetype possesses them as completely as it confuses you. In moments of clarity between archetypal possessions, many women feel genuine horror at their own behavior, yet feel powerless to change the pattern without understanding its archetypal roots. Jung's most profound insight was that this archetype cannot be defeated through willpower or reasoning. The Dark Mother has survived for millennia precisely because she operates below the threshold of consciousness. She adapts, she shapeshifts, she goes underground when confronted directly, only to emerge later in more subtle forms. The only path beyond this pattern is through consciousness, bringing the archetype fully into awareness where its power diminishes in the light of understanding. And this is where most men fail. They either surrender to the manipulation or fight against it, both responses that strengthen rather than dissolve the archetypal pattern. You now stand at the threshold of a profound transformation in how you experience relationships with women. The veil has been lifted on the archetypal forces that have influenced every significant relationship in your life. This knowledge isn't just intellectually illuminating, it's emotionally liberating. The Dark Mother archetype and its manipulative expressions aren't personal, they're primordial. When you truly understand this, resentment dissolves into compassion. Not the compassion of condescension, but the deep recognition that we are all caught in archetypal patterns until we develop the consciousness to transcend them. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming psychologically whole, requires integrating both light and shadow aspects of all archetypes. For women, this means consciously embracing both the nurturing and destructive aspects of the mother, the purity and seductiveness of the maiden, the wisdom and judgment of the crone. For you as a man, it means recognizing and integrating your own anima, your inner feminine, so you project less and perceive women more accurately. Here are the concrete steps toward freedom from these manipulative patterns. First, develop archetypal awareness. When manipulation appears, ask, which archetype is expressing itself right now? This simple act of naming creates crucial distance between you and the emotional triggering. You begin to see the universal pattern rather than just the personal affront. Second, identify your own participation. How does your unintegrated anima contribute to these dynamics? What unconscious expectations do you place on women to embody your inner feminine? As you integrate these disowned aspects of yourself, your relationships transform. Third, practice conscious response rather than unconscious reaction. When the Dark Mother archetype appears in a relationship, neither fight nor surrender. Instead, acknowledge the archetypal energy directly. I see that we've entered a pattern here that's bigger than both of us. This naming often creates a sudden break in the archetypal possession. Fourth, seek relationships with women who are doing their own shadow work. The most profound connections occur between people committed to consciousness. A woman integrating her own Dark Mother archetype develops the capacity for direct communication, emotional accountability, and authentic vulnerability. Finally, remember that this journey isn't about becoming invulnerable to manipulation. It's about becoming so conscious of the patterns that they no longer control you from the shadows. As Jung himself said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The relationships that await you beyond these unconscious patterns contain depths of connection most men never experience. When two people relate from consciousness rather than archetypal possession, something extraordinary emerges. A relationship where authenticity replaces strategy, where vulnerability becomes strength, where the masculine and feminine dance together rather than battle for control. How has this revelation changed your perspective on past relationships? Can you recognize moments when you were caught in the grip of these archetypal patterns? Share your insights in the comments below. Your experience might illuminate the path for countless others facing these same ancient struggles. If this exploration of the female shadow has resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe to continue this journey into psychological truth. And don't miss our previous videos on masculine archetypes and the hero's journey. Understanding both masculine and feminine unconscious dynamics is essential for genuine transformation. Remember Jung's most powerful insight: until you make the unconscious conscious, It will direct your life and you will call it fate. Your relationships aren't predetermined fate. They're your greatest opportunity for awakening. The unconscious female manipulation that once controlled your emotional life can become the very catalyst that propels you toward unprecedented psychological freedom and authentic connection.